Ahoy, this is Admiral. Today we're talking about scorpions and the oft-proposed idea of giving them the attack ground ability. This idea has made the rounds many times on Reddit, the official forums, and surely elsewhere, and understandably so. Scorpions are perceived as one of the more situational units, usually requiring a mass to be effective, and still easily countered by other siege units such as mangonels, bombard cannons, and even rams. Furthermore, they're generally too slow to force fights, bad against defensive buildings, and still vulnerable to several fast or high pierce armor units if not supported properly. Considering that every other generic ranged siege unit has the attack ground ability, as well as cannon galleons, dromons, and turtle ships since the December 2023 patch, it's natural to think that Scorpions might also be a likely candidate to receive this ability. But I'm here to show you why, while it might sound good on paper, and with all due respect to those who proposed it, this is actually a terrible idea and should never be implemented. First off, we're briefly going to cover how Scorpions deal damage. Unlike other siege units that deal blast damage that scales with distance from the center point, like an explosive, Scorpions don't actually deal standard blast damage at all. Instead, they have a two-tiered damage system wherein the targeted unit takes full damage, and any adjacent units whose hitbox overlaps with the Scorpion's projectile, as well as units up to 3 tiles behind the target when at maximum range, take half damage. So compared to the explosive-like behavior of mangonel projectiles, think of the Scorpion Bolt as a very large arrow that deals full damage by skewering its chosen target and grazes other units in its path for half damage. To illustrate this, I have a column of 3 tiles, and each tile has 2 elite Teutonic Knights stacked on exactly the same position, with a Scorpion firing on them. Notice that when the target knight has been killed, the other knight standing in exactly the same position still has half his health remaining. While this is certainly an example of strange AoE 2 logic, it's not any stranger than having 2 units occupy the same space. And it makes sense from the perspective of the game mechanic that the Scorpion only does full damage to the unit it explicitly targets, again whether that unit is targeted by you or auto-targeted by the game. This is unlike the mangonel line, where damage is dealt in accordance with proximity to the projectile, regardless of what is targeted. I can stack 50 Teutonic Knights on that tile, and all of them will take full damage if the mangonel projectile connects with their hitboxes. Now that we've laid the groundwork of mechanics, let's see what this means in practice, firstly when it comes to targeting moving units. Unless you're playing as Romans, Scorpions don't have the ability to track moving units. And even a slow unit can easily escape if you avoid the common movie blunder of running directly in the path of the oncoming danger, whether it be a Scorpion Bolt, falling building, or rolling boulder. I've given this Scorpion attack ground, so let's see if I can use it to hit this Teutonic Knight moving perpendicular to the bolt path. As you can see, I am able to hit it, but it's only dealing half damage. As to why this happens when I attack ground, the answer lies in the name itself. When you attack ground with Scorpions, you're telling them that the primary target is, well, the ground. You're wasting the Scorpion's potential by telling it to deal its full damage to something that's incapable of taking damage. Even if an enemy unit is occupying that ground, such that it seems to get hit square on, it's considered a secondary target, just as we saw earlier with the second Teutonic Knight stacked on the same tile as the one that was targeted. So the best you can do with the attack ground ability on Scorpions is to achieve what is considered a grazing hit for half damage. This is still better than getting 0 damage if you're not able to hit the unit at all, but certainly unimpressive, especially given the work you put into micromanage the Scorpion. Okay, but what about the extra 3 tiles of range that everyone assumes you're going to get by firing your bolt into the ground from maximum range? Nope. Once again, that mechanic only applies if the Scorpion targets a unit, and you're wasting the Scorpion's mechanic by telling its bolt to pass through something, in this case the ground, that it can't meaningfully pass through. Even buildings, while they take full damage, don't activate the pass-through mechanic because they are considered obstacles, as they should be. Firing your Scorpion Bolt into the ground, or into the water, does not magically allow it to fly above the ground or water to shoot through enemy units behind where you've told it to land. While those 2 flaws should be enough to bolt the door shut on this idea, I've got more. Scorpions also require greater accuracy to damage a moving target because they don't benefit from standard blast damage. An arrow, or even a large bolt, can whistle right past a soldier, or impact itself on the ground nearby with little or no damage, whereas an explosive landing similarly close will inflict severe damage. While it's true that a Scorpion's projectile flies faster than that of a mangonel, theoretically making it easier to aim as there's less airtime to account for, this is mostly undermined by the fact that Scorpions have an attack delay, unlike mangonels. Meaning that there's a short timer between aiming and firing, and in practice the Scorpion bolt will not land that much sooner than the mangonel shot. Scorpions also reload more quickly, which theoretically could be an advantage, but also means you'll have to spend much more time microing them to get a similar result. And there's always the prospect of having your attention drawn elsewhere, only to return and find your Scorpions uselessly firing into the same spot. Consider that even under the idealized circumstances of full target damage and pass-through, you would usually need around 4 hits from a Scorpion's attack ground to do as much damage to a single unit as a single hit from a mangonel, on top of doing much less damage to the surrounding units. And it takes almost 2.5 times as long to get those 4 shots off, not to mention needing to land every one of them with greater accuracy than with a mangonel. I've also found that microing groups of Scorpions to attack ground is very clunky, and you'll almost always run into problems aligning the timing for faraway targets or the trajectory for nearby targets of all the Scorpion bolts. So is this ability completely useless? Not quite. To be fair, it does add a marginal use case of being able to hit moving units for half damage if you aim carefully, as well as occasionally being able to micro your way around its minimum range, but again, for half damage. So at best, it looks like a high-effort, micro-intensive way of badly approximating what Roman Scorpions get for free, on top of other major benefits to their Scorpion line. Most of the assumptions people make that would seem to favor this change just don't hold up at all under experimentation. You can micro your heart out with attack ground Scorpions and may end up with less to show for it than if you did absolutely nothing and just let the Scorpions auto-fire. Even if they dealt full damage and passed through with attack ground, Scorpions simply aren't hard-hitting enough to be worth the actions per minute needed to micromanage them effectively with attack ground. You'd almost certainly be better off tending to your economy, microing other units supporting your Scorpions, or even using hit and run with your Scorpions. So what are the takeaways from this? It's true that we could theoretically overhaul the game in order to align the performance of attack ground Scorpions with common assumptions, but this would involve major changes to several long-standing mechanics, and attack ground Scorpions would still be a questionable use of APM, and suffer from the need for greater accuracy when aiming, attack delay, and the lower damage output of Scorpions. If you think that Scorpions could still use a buff to make them better against moving targets, it makes much more sense to me to go down the path trailblazed by the Romans, of simply giving all Scorpions the ability to benefit from ballistics. Romans still have several other claims to fame for their Scorpions, but if you're still wary of stepping on their toes, the target tracking ability for Scorpions could even be tied to an inexpensive Universal Siege Workshop technology that Romans could get for free or at a steep discount. Or Romans could be unique in missing the new technology, but have its effect added to their ballista's unique technology at no extra cost. There are quite a few other possible methods of buffing Scorpions that you may prefer, or perhaps you think they're fine in their current niche and don't need any changes. But I think you might agree that almost any other type of change, or even doing nothing, would probably be preferable to the extremely underwhelming attack ground ability. So to sum up what we've learned, Scorpions suffer several major drawbacks when given the attack ground ability that make it a very poor fit for their characteristics. They lose their ability to deal full damage as well as their pass-through ability. Their lack of traditional blast damage means near misses deal no damage. Their lower attack, and again, lack of blast damage, means they require much more time and effort in order to inflict the same levels of damage as mangonel line units, and their attack delay adds precious time to the already finely tuned accuracy required to use them. Overall, it's just not a great plan. If you found this interesting, you can fire away at the like button. If you have other thoughts, you can launch them into the comments section, and you can subscribe to track the movement of my other videos. This has been me attacking the grounds on which the assumptions about an anticlimactic artillery ability are assembled. Till next time.